This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Riley Smith.
Welcome into Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Riley Smith. Today is Monday, November 10th of 2025. We're so glad you can join us for today's show. We'll have Sam Trainer of agmarket.net on the show later for the closing market report. But first, I'm talking with Ruth Rabinowitz. She is the 2025 recipient of the Farmland Owner Legacy Award from the Practical Farmers of Iowa. And Ruth, it is great to visit with you today. First off, if you could tell us a little bit about what exactly it is you do as a non-operator landowner and kind of your goal in that role.
Yeah, so it started with my father purchasing farm ground in Iowa in 1978. And as he aged out, he alluded to someday this is going to be yours. And then that day arrived. About 2014, he was hospitalized, and couldn't travel to Iowa very well anymore. And I had already run businesses, so I stepped into the role of farmland owner manager at that point in time. And I had done, various horticulture classes and stuff, but really this just dropped in my lap. And I immediately saw erosion and the need for a lot more oversight of these farms that had been professionally managed. And I just was like, what's going on? So I just knew that I had to get completely involved with that. And it took a lot of years to get really up to speed, when it's a brand new business as complex as agriculture is. And I just pretty much dropped my career as a wedding and portrait photographer, my work in nonprofits. We became a family limited partnership. I had enough income to somehow cobble together a lifestyle, and just did it full time so I could understand what was happening on these farms in Iowa.
So then when it comes to those farms, first off, how many acres do you manage, and what all do you have on those farms right now?
Sure. So there originally were 1,600 acres. My sister got half of the property when my dad passed in 2017. I have about 800 acres. And what's happening is there's one farm in South Dakota. That's the unique one. That one is going to be grazed by 64 head of cattle shortly, with electric fence and a solar water station. So that's the different one from Iowa. And that one has grown wheat, oats, black oil sunflowers for birdseed, corn this year, of course, soybeans in the past. So much more diversified crops that they have co-ops for up in South Dakota, that we don't have areas like that here that would take those kinds of products as easily. So that's kind of a benefit of South Dakota. In Iowa, it's the typical corn bean rotation. I did have 4 years of alfalfa on one farm that was being cut for animal feed. And then about a third of my acres are in the Conservation Reserve Program, which I am a huge fan of, for wildlife habitat, for wetland habitat, for buffers, for grass waterways, and things like that.
I think it's great to see that promotion of conservation, especially on farms here in Iowa. When it comes to those conservation goals that you have, tell us a little bit more about that and what exactly your general goals are when it comes to those conservation practices.
Yeah, so fortunately, my father didn't have the idea of farming every last acre everywhere and just blowing out, trees and stuff. So when I inherited farms and started getting involved, there were already a lot of areas that were already sort of natural areas. And so I just kind of tacked onto that. And I got the idea from the Department of Natural Resources to put basically a frame around all 4 sides of the farm to create wildlife corridors. And those are all in Conservation Reserve program. So I get a annual payment. Of course, it's delayed right now because everything's closed. And it's for the nesting and the broods and things like that. And I just really felt like the topsoil was just going to run off the ground if we were farming right to the fence, right to the ditch. There was nothing. There were no deep roots to keep the topsoil in place. So not only do I get an annual payment, which is actually a pretty good payment in some cases for the Conservation Reserve program, tall grass prairie species of grasses and flowers, or forbs. I'm creating habitat for the white-tailed deer, for the pheasant, for the turkey, for the bobwhite quail, and on and on and on. And then I can then rent out valuable hunting leases on top of that. So all of my farms, except for South Dakota, the one area, are leased for hunting to individuals. I do have an open hunting contract with Pheasants Forever up in South Dakota. So it is being hunted as an open property with walk-in access in the Glacier Lakes area of South Dakota. But down in southern Iowa and even in northern Iowa, I have so many pheasant and white, trophy kind of bucks of white-tailed deer and even some turkey population that I can get additional revenue streams, which has actually been very important lately for the hunting leases. So it's just maximum 2 people hunting. They have to have all the insurance. They pay a fee. And I think it's a really win-win situation.
And I think that's very interesting to see that, especially as we have shotgun season approaching right now. I'm an avid hunter myself, and to see those lands, I think there's demand for that hunting land as well, as there's way less people who are maybe connected to the farm. So in my situation, I'm able to hunt on my dad's farm. I know a lot of people that have to rely on those public hunting grounds or, like you mentioned, those leasing grounds. And have you seen an increase in demand for that hunting access?
Well, I actually use Hunting Lease Network at this point, which is kind of a sub offshoot of Farmers National. I used to have my own hunting leases with my own lease terms, but I find that it's really worth the percentage that you pay to them for the representative to go ahead and get these leases done and just sort of take care of all the paperwork. So I really, really like them a lot. I think that, yeah, it's a really valuable resource. I think it is getting even more popular. I mean, I don't know what kind of massive millions or billions it does a year, but you can see it at Shields. You can go into the hunting section. You can see everything for sale, just the clothing and everything involved. I mean, the stands and the blinds and the vehicles. So it's a really great, not really agritourism, but sports hobby for Iowa. And I didn't understand it as a California person for a long time, but I really get it now that, let's say in California, we have surfing or we have various things that we do in the ocean. Out here, it's hunting. And that is the winter sport. That is what you are going to be doing. That's your piece. That's your time out there. And I really appreciate people that actually use all the meat. And then my hunters do, we have really good relationships with my hunters. And so they getting me some ground venison and loin, and I use it just like ground beef. It's really good. And it's right from the farm. And it's, I think it's more lean and it's, wild meat. So I think it's a great thing.
And thanks again to Ruth Rabinowitz for joining us on today's show. We will go ahead and take a look at the closing market. And right now I have Sam Trainer of agmarket.net joining me. Sam, what do we see in the grains today?
We saw green on the screen across the board. Both corn, soybeans, and the cattle markets all had a really good start to the week this week. Corn futures and soybeans were supported by optimism surrounding the potentially getting closer to the end of this government shutdown that we've been experiencing. There was some comments out this weekend that the Senate is looking to advance a bill that could end the shutdown here. I know here, regardless of what happens in Washington this week, we are going to get our first USDA WASDE report that we've had since I think is all the way back in September was the last one that we had. So we will get updated WASDE numbers this Friday. Looking forward to that. But I think just some renewed optimism that the government shutdown may be coming to a close. Definitely supported markets, and like I said, not just the grains, even the equities and the outside markets were all sharply higher today as well.
And I know even having skipped that October WASDE report, not necessarily a bunch of huge changes that we're expecting in this November one, right?
Not a ton of huge changes, but anytime you go, 2 months without anything, there's always a curveball that could be thrown at us here. I know that traders right now are definitely looking at a yield estimate below where USDA is set right now, and with the Midwest pretty much all but complete with harvest right now, we should have a pretty good grasp on what those yields are. Not having that October report, there's a little buffer there. Usually you're working out those yield adjustments through harvest season. We didn't get that this year because when we saw the September report, we were just getting started with harvest. Obviously, October, we were right in the middle of harvest, but did not get a report. So now that we're at the tail end of harvest, should have a pretty good idea on where those yields are at. But again, you have to remember the government has been shut down. So the workforce is probably a little bit lighter staffed there as far as getting those reports. But it'll be interesting to see what we get here towards the end of the week.
And then over on the livestock side of things, Sam, how did cattle and hogs trade today?
More crazy headlines and crazy market action on the cattle and hogs once again. Cattle were limit higher today. We've been touching the limits. It's become pretty normal recently, but cattle markets closed sharply higher today, up the limit in the feeders and the fats. And that's mainly in part due to the comments from President Trump that came out late last week after the markets closed on Friday. We saw that he has kind of taken some of the blame off of the ranchers like he had in the past and putting it more on the packing industry, thinking that the packers, are kind of price gouging, so to speak, and they are who's to blame for the higher beef prices, because obviously cattle futures have dropped sharply here recently, but box beef prices still higher. So looking into that and maybe investigating that, and the market took that as a very positive signal here for the markets. And just technically speaking here, obviously we did quite a bit of damage on the charts over the last couple of weeks, but hard to believe after breaking as hard as we did, but there is still an uptrend intact. So we're going to kind of look at last week's low as pretty strong support now going forward. And if we can maintain that low and hopefully try to work back higher. I don't know if we'll get all the way back up to the highs or not, but definitely a good sign today, starting the week off on a higher note like that.
All right, Sam, lots of great information today. For anyone who wants to get in touch with agmarket.net, how can they do that?
Best way would be to visit our website at agmarket.net, or you could give us a phone call here at Normal at 1-800-779-1515.
Thanks again for the time, as always, Sam, and we'll talk again soon.
All right, thank you.
That again was Sam Trainer of agmarket.net. We'll take a look at how the numbers closed through the market window at iowaagnet.com. At the close, December corn up 2.5 at 429 3/4. January soybeans up 13 even at 11.30 even. December soybean meal up 2.90 at 3.20 even. Soybean oil up 90 cents at 50.58. Chicago wheat up 8 even at 5.35 3/4. Kansas City hard red winter wheat up 7 3/4 at 5.27 even. Minneapolis spring wheat up 6 1/4 at 5.64 1/4. December oats up 6 1/4 at 2.98 even. On the Merc, December live cattle up 7.20 at 228.55. November feeders limit up 9.25 at 335.65. December lean hogs up 3.37 at 82.77. Pork cutout went unchanged at 95 even, and November Class 3 milk up 7 cents at 17.27. That's been a check of the markets here on Ag Matters PM. Find all of our daily ag news content on our website at iowaagnet.com. From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, I'm Riley Smith. On behalf of Mark Magnuson and Dustin Huffman, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.